Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining today's webinar. My name is Zach Barbetta. I'm a Senior Product Manager on the Amazon Pinpoint service. And today we're going to do a deep dive on Amazon Pinpoint's segmentation capabilities, as well as talk about best practices for endpoint management. So there's really three components to today's webinar. First, defining and talking about digital user engagement, what that means, what it means for you, and ultimately what it means for your customers. Two, talk about pinpoint and segmentation, specifically a use case that we want to walk through to show you how you can leverage the capability of pinpoint. And three, we want to talk about endpoint management, specifically a new feature we rolled out called Phone Number Verify. So those are the three things we're hoping to accomplish today. So let's just jump right into it. So what is digital user engagement? Part one. So when we talk about digital user engagement, we have sort of this saying, this phrase within the organization, and that's to be right about the conversation you have, the audience you target, and the place and time you choose to interact. So this isn't anything new. This isn't anything groundbreaking or something you didn't know. It's just something we always keep front of mind when we're talking about user engagement, specifically digital user engagement. So I'm going to talk briefly about what exactly each of these really tenets mean for us. So when we talk about time on the fourth line, when we talk about time, we want to make sure that you're engaging with users at the appropriate time. And I'll give you an example. So one of Amazon Pinpoint's great customers is Hulu, and they think quite a bit about time. They think about time because it's really important to their customers. The customers want to know when the show is starting, when that sport event went to overtime, when a new series is premiering. Time is a critical component to their digital user engagement. So they do a very good job of thinking about time when they engage. Next, place. So what do we mean when we say place? Well, there's really two components to place. One, your physical location, where are you in the world? And second, how do we communicate to you over the what channel? You know, is it an SMS? Is it an email? Is it a push? Is it a Facebook message? Is it a WhatsApp post? When we talk about place, it could also mean the channel. So place in terms of geography is important because you don't want to send a notification to someone who's not in the city that you're located. You know, we've all received messages, you know, come get this delicious, coffee at your local roastery, but you're on a business trip somewhere else. So that message, while very relevant to you when you're home, is no longer relevant when you're away. When we talk about channels, as mentioned, it's how we engage over which channels. So I'm sure we've all been subject to receiving an email when by the time you see the email, it's no longer relevant, such as a one-time password. Perhaps it's better to send a one-time password over a push notification or an SMS instead of an email. So the next, we want to talk about the audience you target. And so this is probably well known to the audience, but the audience is really the group of people that you want to talk with about your messaging, about your place and your time. Now you want the right audience. So we think about audience as the group of people that are going to be most interested in the message that you're sending them. This is your segment. So I think another great example here is another Amazon Pinpoint customer, Game Time. Game Time sends last-minute ticket deals to customers that are interested in certain teams. So this is really important because if you send a ticket deal to someone who, let's say, likes the Seahawks and you send them a ticket deal for, let's say, the 49ers, that person isn't going to resonate with that offer as much as someone else in the appropriate segment. So when we think about audience, it's, do I have the right end user? Do I have the right customer receiving this message? And then the first item on the second row, conversation. When we think about conversation, it's really the aggregation of all the components of your digital user engagement. So are you really engaging in a conversation with your customer, or are you spamming them with a message? We don't want to do that. You don't want to enable spam. You want to have great conversations with your customers. And another good example is an Amazon Pinpoint customer, Amazon Music. So for those familiar with Amazon Music, it's a fantastic streaming music platform. And when they have conversations with customers, it's really about what's most exciting to their customers. Where's that local band or that headliner that's coming to town? Where are they going to be? How do you get tickets? How do you listen? How do you engage? So having the right conversation is really important. So that's how we think about digital user engagement. So continuing to the next slide, we think a lot about digital user engagement and how it relates to the different primitives at AWS. So in the top half of the slide, you see Amazon.com. Amazon.com does a great job of surprising and delighting their customers. And they do that through a lot of components on AWS. On the bottom half of the screen, you see many customers that leverage AWS for different user engagement needs. For example, we've talked about Hulu in the top left, we talked about Game Time on the bottom row, but let's talk about Netflix. Netflix has transactional email workloads built on top of AWS because they want to enable certain use cases for their end users, and AWS provides those services. So when we talk about digital user engagement, it's not just Amazon Pinpoint, it's all the AWS services and how you as a customer can use different ones to create the best use case for your customers. So now we're going to talk about why delightful user engagement is difficult. So there's really 5 things that we think about when we try to develop the tools and features for you to create delightful user engagement. So first, it's learn the audience. So we talked about this briefly earlier, but you need to understand what your customers are telling you. A lot of times, collecting that data and understanding it is one of the most difficult parts. So we help you decompose sort of what your customers are implicitly telling you through their actions. And what do we mean by that? Well, a customer action is clicking on a notification or an email, or opting out from a certain communication. These are all your voice of your customer telling you what they want you to communicate to them. Next, identify segments. So again, this is something that we talked about earlier, but you want to make sure that you have your users clearly defined and that they make sense. The simple example is if you take the city of New York, that city is so diverse and so rich in different backgrounds that you want to make sure when you engage those individuals that they're in the appropriate segments, because then they'll resonate with your messages more. Third, engage at the right place and time. That's critically important as highlighted. You want to make sure that the message gets over the right channel to the right location at the right time. The best message in the world, if it comes at 2 a.m. in the morning, probably isn't going to have the same amount of engagement if it's sent at the right time. 4 is personalize. So we've all, again, gotten emails or texts or push that weren't personalized. They were generic and it felt a little disingenuous. So when we think about delightful user engagement experiences, it really comes down to personalization. Is this message personalized to the segment of one? When we say segment of one, is the individual. Each customer should be treated as its own unique endpoint, person, individual, and personalization helps you get closer to that. And then 5th, and arguably most important, is measure the impact. And what we mean by that is after you've done all this hard work to engage with your users, you need to see how it worked. And you need to see how it worked because you need to get better. Each time you execute a campaign or you onboard some user engagement workloads, you should try to understand what the KPIs are before. So after you execute, you can benchmark yourself and say, okay, we need to get better here. This was great. Let's try a few different things. So measure the impact is really important. If you can master these 5 things, then delightful user engagement won't be so difficult for you. So that was part 1. Now we're going to actually go a little more deeper into Amazon Pinpoint, the service that I'm a product manager for. So this is part 2 of the presentation, and before we jump into the segmentation component of Pinpoint, just give a brief overview of what Amazon Pinpoint is. So as you can see on the screen, there's 3 core components. First, user insights and analytics. So this provides you the ability to measure what your end users are doing, what your customers are doing with both your messages as well as your applications. These can be web or mobile applications. And so this is important, right? When we talked about on a couple slides ago, the importance of measure engage, enables you to do that. Amazon Pinpoint's analytics platform enables you to really understand what your customers are doing. And that's critical, right? That drives everything that you should be doing. Second is audience targeting. So being able to define your segments based on user events and preferences. So what exactly does that mean? Well, it simply means that Amazon Pinpoint makes it easy with a few clicks to take that audience, take that New York City example, and slice and dice it into segments of liked users, of similar folks. And this is really important, right? We talked about the importance of segmentation and delivering the right content, the right message to the right people. So that's a second pillar of Amazon Pinpoint. And the third is direct and targeted messaging. So let's take it from step one. You've got great analytics. You know exactly what your customers want. Step two, you've defined a neat segment of really similar users, and they're going to love your message, and they're going to enjoy it over an SMS instead of an email. And then step three is actually getting that message to the end user. So this is the last part, but it's really important because you have to get the message there. So direct and targeted messaging, what that means is being able to send at scale and reliably millions and billions of notifications to your end users. And so this is where we talked about earlier, the right channel. So SMS, email, push, or social media platforms. So that's really the third component. So when you think about Amazon Pinpoint, it's really a single service that lets you manage all of your user engagement, both targeted user engagement, so you think your marketing, as well as your direct, your transactional messaging, think receipts. So let's briefly talk through some of the key features and functionality of Amazon Pinpoint. So as you can see on some of the screenshots, you have the ability to see, as soon as you log in, rich dashboards and the key KPIs that you're tracking. So again, this is important because this tells you right away each day, hey, you're doing above expectations, or hey, you're slightly below, what happened? So these are important metrics that you see. Also, the ability to import segments or create segments from your analytics. So there's two things there. One, import segments, because we know that a lot of customers have rich segmentation outside of Amazon Pinpoint. So we make it easy for you to import those users in. So one, that's really important, import segments. Second, derived segments. So this is the ability to create segments based on your users' actions. And just in a few slides, we'll show you a demo of what exactly that means. Of course, there's multi-channel messaging. We've talked about that a few times, being able to get a message over the right channel. And then on the bottom right, you'll see some really interesting things that you want to do as best practices. So A/B/N testing, and that is a prudent step to take before you launch a production campaign. It's to test it appropriately, right? When you do more and more testing, you can fine-tune your engagement and ultimately lead to a better, delightful customer experience. Holdout rates, that's really important, so you can have holdout groups for any statistical study you want to have a test and control. So Pinpoint makes this easy with a simple slider. Then, of course, messaging, personalization, and scheduling. So getting the right message, the right personalized content, and scheduling that. And that last point, scheduling, I think is really important. And again, we'll talk about this in a little bit, but scheduling messages enables you to automate some of the work you've done. So you've done the testing, you've done the correct analysis on what your customers want. Now you need to schedule it, and you want this to happen on a daily basis or weekly or monthly or what have you. So scheduling is really powerful because it enables you to focus on building a product and let Amazon Pinpoint sort of handle the logistics of it. So now we're going to go into a brief demo. So I think it's always easier when we talk about something that we can all relate to. So in this demo, we have Susan's Cake Shop. So there's a couple participants here. First, we have Susan. She's the owner of a cake shop. Next, it's the cakes, in this case, a cupcake. So she has a shop that makes various items. We've all been to them. I'd love to go to one here shortly. Next, there's a mobile app for her bake shop. So, right, most companies these days have some sort of mobile engagement. We know the trends in the industry as customers are more mobile-centric. So she has a mobile application. And of course, most important is the customer. So that's her customer there who's clearly had one of her delicious treats and is pretty happy. So this is sort of the components of the demo. And so what are we trying to do with this demo? So first, what is the objective? Simple. Susan's objective is to sell more baked goods, right? That's her core competency. That's what she wants. So what's her problem? Well, why can't Susan do that? Well, one of the problems is she wants to get more people into the store at the right time with the right offer. She wants people to come in saying, I got this great message, Susan. I love your brownies. I'll take 10. So what's her solution? How is she going to get more people into the store? Well, it's going to be, as you probably guessed, what we talked about earlier, creating complex, personalized push notifications easily. So when we say complex, we don't mean that it's difficult or intricate or it takes, a rocket science to do it. We mean that the segmentation that she's going to do is so I guess, unique and specific to a cohort of her customers that it's complex. And what's Susan's constraint? Well, it's time, right? Most of us have a constraint on time. It's finite, and so her time really should be spent on baking, not marketing. And so that's really one of her biggest constraints is she needs a solution that she herself can do quickly so she can get back into the kitchen. So step one, determine what the customers want. So if I'm Susan and I want to know really what's the composition of my customer base. And so Amazon Pinpoint provides this for you. As you can see, these are standard attributes of Susan's customers. So you see all this data and you see all the pretty colors, and frequently customers say, okay, so what's the big insight? What's the takeaway here? So one of the takeaways is that Susan's customers are global, with the majority being from the US and Denmark. So if you look at the last pie chart on the right, you see the composition of her customer base. So the orange portion of the circle is the US, and the teal greenish is Denmark. So that's exciting, right? So that implies that she probably has 2 stores, one in Denmark, one in the US, and that her customer base is predominantly from those 2 regions. So the next slide, the continuation of step 1, is to learn more about what the customers want. And Amazon Pinpoint lets you do that with custom attributes. So custom attributes are things that you define within Amazon Pinpoint, and they're specific to your business, your project, your application. So for Susan, custom attributes are the sales of her type of SKUs, her desserts, as well as a custom attribute of what time people are coming to her store during the day. So on the left pie chart, you can see there's 4 different SKUs that she sells. And immediately you can see, wow, like cream cheese brownies are really popular. Over half of her sales come from cream cheese brownies. On the right-hand side, you see the foot traffic by time of day. And this is exciting because now Susan knows with a glance of a chart when most of her traffic is coming. And this is really easy to do. There's really 2 ways. One, you can merge offline store data with online Amazon Pinpoint data with a simple update endpoint API call. Or 2, foot traffic could be simply something that customers check in when they arrive to her store, or purchase through the mobile app when they get there. And that can be, those events can be handled automatically by Amazon Pinpoint, so that these charts populate with very minimal instrumentation and initial setup. So the key insight here is sort of what we covered, that people come in the evenings and they really like the cream cheese brownies. The number 2 item is pumpkin rolls. So these are all good things that Susan should know, and she probably does, right? She probably knew this before Amazon Pinpoint. So why is this really exciting and relevant? Well, this data is all within Amazon Pinpoint for her at her fingertips. So she and her marketing team can leverage this from the same service that they're going to create a campaign and engage with. So that's really one of the ideas and one of the themes of Amazon Pinpoint is it's one service that really provides a wide surface area for all your user engagement. Your analytics are there, as well as your messaging capabilities. So you don't have to go to different services. You don't have to import data from a variety of tools. It's all one comprehensive suite. So step 2, engage based on what we know. So what exactly does that mean? Well, now that we know some really interesting things about Susan's customers, first where they're from, what they purchase, and what time of the day they come, we want to build a segment that is specific or very focused. So as you can see on the screenshot, we have a segment named My Top Customers, and we want to build a segment of top customers based on the events that Amazon Pinpoint has ingested. And remember, these events that Amazon Pinpoint is ingesting, these are simply actions that your customers are taking, that Susan's customers are taking. So the work is really being done for us because our customers, your customers, in this example, Susan's customers, are telling us. So what is Susan's goal here when she's trying to engage customers? Well, she wants to reach out to the right customers using her customer insights. Great, so now we're going to actually filter Susan's customers based on some really important criteria. So the first one is have used the app in the last 7 days. So if you recall earlier, Susan has a mobile application for her store, and she wants just her top users, her most loyal fans. So she's going to set a criteria so that only people that have used the application within the last day will receive her push notification. But she wants to get a little bit deeper, right? She wants to get a little more fine-grained because this is an important campaign. It's going to be running every day automatically. So she wants to make sure that it gets really to the best people. So she's going to target people that just have Android devices. And there could be many reasons why she targets Android devices. Perhaps there's a new Android phone coming out and she made an Android cookie. Whatever that might be, for this example, she wants to target just people that have Android devices. Additionally, she wants to add some more filters based on her custom attributes. So earlier we talked about the standard attributes and the custom attributes. So now this is where she can really make Amazon Pinpoint her own, because she's going to filter on the custom attributes she set. So first is time in evening. So she wants her customers to receive the message if they've come to the store in the evening. So maybe she knows something about the time of day, or maybe she's planning her schedule and knows that she won't have capacity in the morning, or maybe she's simply just trying to target the most busy times because once there's a crowd, more people come. Whatever the idea is, she can do that through custom attributes by targeting just folks that came in the evening. Lastly, she wants folks that are just in the Raleigh, North Carolina area. So we saw earlier in some of the standard attributes that her two major drivers of location are Denmark and the US. So we can imply that the store is probably located in Raleigh, since she's segmenting her users based on the city location. So in this example, she has 4 major constraints, which are taking her total user population and whittling it down to a very small segment that she thinks is going to be really excited to receive her notification. So as we've demonstrated, Susan wants customers from Raleigh that come in the evening and have an Android device. So that's her target segment. Great, so personalize the message. So now this is where it gets really exciting. This is where you're creating content that you are actually going to send out to all of your end users, your customers. In Susan's case, her top customers. So when we say personalize the message, we really mean that each individual message should be for one specific person. So as you see the blue boxes that just came onto the slide, you'll see what we mean by personalization. So Amazon Pinpoint lets you update the message with values specific to that user or that endpoint. So in this example, Susan's sending a push notification. So all of her users and their endpoint is their mobile device. And so when this message is delivered, it won't say attribute.name or attribute.favorite item. It will pull that attribute value off of the endpoint specific for each individual customer. So in this example, you see the title says attribute.name cake for you. So what that will translate into is Jenny's cake for you. And so there's the personalization. If you go down to the message component of the body, it'll get a little more detailed, right? This is when the person or the customers open the message, and it'll say, Jenny, we wanted to let you know that your attributes.favorite item, so in this case, Jenny's favorite item is cream cheese brownies. We wanted to let you know that your cream cheese brownies is being cooked hot in today's bake schedule, 5 p.m. Come in anytime after for a tasty treat. And then you can see the emojis there because rich notifications tend to get more engagement. So this is what we mean by personalize the message. Make the user, the customer, in this case Susan's customer, Jenny, make her feel special when she receives that notification. So what is Susan trying to accomplish here? She wants each customer to get a very personalized, highly relevant message. One call out, which I think is always important, is the test campaign functionality you see highlighted on the screen. So this is just really a best practice call out before executing a campaign and sending it to hundreds of thousands, if not millions of customers. Testing from the campaign wizard is always a prudent step so that you ensure you're getting exactly the message that your customers are going to get. So continuing on, set and forget. So this is always a great part of any marketer's day, is when you can set a campaign and forget about it. At least forget about it in the short term until you come back to look at the analytics. So what we mean by that is Amazon Pinpoint scheduling tools enable this automation. the ability to schedule a campaign, set certain parameters around that campaign, and then have Pinpoint do the work for dynamically creating the segment each runtime, as well as sending it out on the schedule that you want. So in Susan's case, she wants this campaign to be daily. She wants to send it out every single day, but she doesn't want to do this manual work every day. She also wants it to be sent out at 6 p.m. So she saw, based on the data, that most customers come between 3 p.m. and close, so she thinks 6 p.m. will be the great time. Additionally, she wants to use users' local time. And this is important. This is another best practice. By ticking this box, essentially, Amazon Pinpoint will send the message to Susan's customer based on their local time. And why is this important? Like, why do we really get excited about this? Well, first, if a customer is no longer in Raleigh and they're in Seattle, you want to make sure that they're getting the message at the appropriate time and not before or after a special promotion or sale may be running. So users' local time helps you really customize the message. And if you recall from the earlier slides, it helps you get the message at the right time to your customers. So in this case, Susan wants to make sure that people just get the notification at 6 p.m. in their local time. So what is Susan trying to accomplish? We discussed she wants this to be a daily campaign that she doesn't have to think about so she can get back to baking. So step 5, delight and surprise. And what we mean by that is this screenshot here is really showing some of the controls that, that really shouldn't be an afterthought to any effective and delightful digital user engagement. So there's 2 that we're highlighting here. So the first one, the maximum number of messages a user can receive per day. This really safeguards the end user, the customer's experience. You can see it set at 1. That means that any of Susan's customer will just receive 1 notification a day. This is important because if Susan has a morning campaign, an afternoon campaign, a nightly campaign, she might not want to have her users, her customers, receive all of those campaign messages, right? A lot of messages can be annoying. So she has this set at 1. Second is the maximum number of messages a user can receive for a campaign. So this is at the specific to a campaign level. And so what we mean by that is Susan has the daily evening campaign to Android users that just come in the evenings and are from Raleigh. So this means that anyone who receives this campaign message once will never receive it again, or never receive it until Susan changes the setting or creates a new campaign. And this is important because each day Susan set this campaign to run. And so that means each day when this campaign runs, it will only pull in new customers for Susan that haven't received this message before. So she knows and can feel confident that this campaign that's running daily isn't sending the same people a message over and over and over again. It's only sending messages to net new customers. So this is what we mean by delight and surprise. The customer should always feel really excited about seeing your notification. So what is Susan trying to accomplish? She's trying to accomplish that the proper controls so that her end users don't receive more than 1 message a day or more than 1 message from a campaign. So that concludes part 2 of the presentation. So now we're going to go to part 3, which is endpoint management specific to SMS. SMS is text messages for those that don't know. So we're going to talk a little bit about first what is text messaging, what are the features Amazon Pinpoint enables, and then we're going to go into talk about a new feature, another best practice, which is phone number verify, which is really important and something we're excited to talk about. So introducing Amazon Pinpoint SMS. So first, we want to talk a little bit about the taxonomy within Pinpoint. So on the screen you see here, there's a user. That's me, you, 1 individual person. So in Amazon Pinpoint, we classify that as a user ID. And a user ID can have multiple endpoints. And an endpoint can be a phone number, an email address, a web browser, a desktop client. It can be a variety of things, an iPad. It can be any device really that is associated with a user. So when we talk about SMS, SMS is an endpoint. It's a phone number. It belongs to a user. It's distinct for that user, but the user could have multiple phone numbers or multiple email addresses or phones and iPads. So those are all endpoints. So we're going to talk a little bit about features of Amazon Pinpoint SMS just to sort of set the context. So text messaging, SMS, is critically important to user engagement. It's also not frequently thought of in front of mind, but it has really immense value. So what exactly are some of the common use cases? So think about when someone's registering for your application. They've downloaded the app from the App Store, they've logged in, and you want to validate that this individual is who they are. So you send them an SMS verification code so that they can log in to your application and verify their identity. So SMS plays an important part in that process. Additionally, what happens if you forget your password, right? We all have logins to tens, if not hundreds of different applications and websites. So if you forget your password, frequently SMS is being used more and more for one-time passwords. It's extremely reliable. It gets to the user very quickly, and it's often much easier to send an SMS than to send an email to someone. So some of the key features, so Amazon Pinpoint has 200 destination countries with connectivity to 1,100 plus telecom carriers. So some of the value here is when you come to Amazon Pinpoint, you can send a message to Canada just as easily as you can send a message to Canada. So having that ability to send messages globally from one service really continues the theme that we touched on earlier, which is Amazon Pinpoint has rich marketing targeting capabilities, but it also has the ability for this transactional, high volume, scalable messaging use cases, all from the same console or APIs. Optimal treatment per traffic type. So that second bullet there. So what does that mean? Well, it means that there's really two types of SMSs that we think about. One, marketing, and two, transactional. And we optimize for deliverability and costs on those. So if you have a marketing message that you want to send through SMS, you will get a lower rate if you decide to send it through that channel or that traffic type versus transactional. Third, dedicated numbers, long codes and short code. So really important that you have provisioned the appropriate long or short code for your use case. And that has support over 100 countries. Inbound messaging. So this is actually really exciting. This is two-way. This is conversations with your customers. So what does that mean exactly? It means you could send an SMS to all your customers. In Susan's case, she could say flash sale 9 a.m. Buy one brownie, get one free, and they could respond back. And you could start this dialogue with customers all through Amazon Pinpoint. Also the support for sender ID, which is important. So when customers receive your text message, they can see the appropriate sender ID. A few other features that are important to call out, usage records, sticky sender IDs, and per message delivery status. So the third one, per message delivery status, is really important. So you have the information such as from, to, disposition, price, dwell time. This data is all provided to you through the CloudWatch. And then, of course, what we ultimately want to check after we've sent a certain number of messages or campaigns is the deliverability statistics. So how exactly did my messages do? Did they get there? What failed? So to talk a little bit more about adaptive worldwide connectivity that Amazon Pinpoint SMS has, we'll just give a very quick example. So, and you can see on North America, specifically Seattle, Washington, there's Amazon Pinpoint. But we want to send a notification to a customer in Beijing, China. So as you can see, there's all these different routes we can take. Those are highlighted by the yellow lines. And you can see the percentages, and that really indicates to Amazon Pinpoint what coverage the aggregators or carriers have for Amazon Pinpoint. And so the green line indicates that this one carrier has 99% coverage. So this is the best carrier. So Amazon Pinpoint handles all this logic for you. So it's really easy for you just to say, hey, I need to get a message from Seattle, Washington to Beijing, China. Amazon Pinpoint, please tell me the best way to do this. And when the green line indicates that this is the route we would take, and ultimately we'd be able to get the notification, in this case, the SMS to the mobile device. And there's a few things that are also really important. Local restrictions solved. And so what does that mean? It means that each country has very unique and specific restrictions. So in France, for example, SMS cannot originate from a standard number. So Amazon Pinpoint switches automatically to a pre-approved delivery code for you. So things you don't have to worry about. In Brazil, a very small but nuanced difference is that the character limit is 157 and not 160. So Amazon Pinpoint will automatically concatenate the message into two so that you ensure the full message is delivered to your user. And then in India, promotional messages can't go out from 9 p.m. to 9 a.m. So if you send a large promotional message and it's going to run past 9 p.m., Amazon Pinpoint will automatically buffer that message and send it once at 9 a.m. the following day starts. Additionally, in India, the transactional messages require a pre-registered communication code, right? You have to register that this communication code is sending transactional messages. And so Amazon Pinpoint converts the message source to a known registered communication code. So we handle that for you. So that's a brief introduction to Amazon Pinpoint SMS. And now I want to talk a little bit about phone number verify in Amazon Pinpoint, which is currently in public preview. So what is the problem we're trying to solve here? Well, as I mentioned earlier, we support the ability to send SMS to 200 plus countries. And as also highlighted, there's unique differences as you go from different country to country, right? The country code for one is different for each country. And there's also a lot of little subtleties that you have to be aware of. So what is Phone Number Verify doing for you? Phone Number Verify is really taking your numbers and ensuring that they're correct, that the quality of the phone number is where it should be so that the SMS message can actually get there. Additionally, some phone numbers can't receive text messages, right? Voice over IP phone numbers cannot, landlines cannot. So when those phone numbers are inputted, Phone Number Verify can prompt your customers to either A, provide a mobile number that can receive text messages, or if the end user would like to receive text to voice, so that the text message is actually called that landline or voice over IP and read to them over voice instead of text. And so, why is this important? Like, why are we so excited about Phone Number Verify? Well, it's because we've looked at the data on our side, and we saw that almost 10% of phone numbers were inputted incorrectly. And so when we think about that for a second, that means that if you have 100 customers you're trying to engage, almost 10 of those will never receive the message, not because they didn't want to, not because they gave a bad phone number, but because they might have inputted the phone number incorrectly. As we mentioned, there's all these little subtleties that it comes to different phone numbers, and Phone Number Verify looks at the number, standardizes it to a set of rules specific to that country, and cleans it up for you automatically. And this ultimately results in, one, you being able to get your message to the customer, and two, your customer receiving that pertinent notification, that one-time password, that verification code. Great, so let's walk through a couple examples of how Phone Number Verify on Amazon Pinpoint can help you and your customers. So on the top portion of this slide, you'll see a phone number on the left and the cleansed phone number on the right. So this example is an example of an improperly inputted country code for a US number. So on the number on the left, you can see it starts with a 0. And what Phone Number Verify will do automatically is cleanse that number and add +1 to the number. So if this didn't happen, the phone number never would have received that text message. But now that Phone Number Verify is supported on Amazon Pinpoint, we can do this for you. Second, there's advanced country-specific fixes. So I mentioned earlier that Phone Number Verify looks at the country code and then looks at a set of rules to understand what it can and should do to cleanse the number. So in this example, we'll look at Brazil. So Brazil traditionally had 8 digits in its phone numbers. Due to population growth and the size of mobile users in the country, they needed 9 numbers. They need to expand the number of digits in a phone number. And so for all the old legacy 8 numbers, they couldn't surely deprecate those. So they said, we're going to add a 9 to the beginning of the 8 digits. So again, if you look at the phone number on the right, starting with 55, it's missing the 9 after the 55. If you look to the right, you can see that we add the plus and the 9 to that. Again, enabling this mobile number to receive the SMS, whereas if the number wasn't cleansed, it wouldn't have successfully gone through. And here's just more examples. So an important thing to note is that Phone Number Verify also provides the metadata of that number. And so what do we mean by metadata? Well, we mean what's the telephone carrier? What type of phone number is it? Landline, VoIP, mobile? And what's the location of the phone number that it was registered? The city, the country, the state, and the time zone. So important things that you want to know about your customers. And of course, all this is available in one API call. So you can fix the numbers and get additional metadata by making a single API call. So that concludes the webinar today. We really appreciate you joining us. For more information, you can visit the URL there, as well as we'll take some questions. Thank you very much.